What's up, everyone, and welcome to ClearTalk. So in this video we're going to be going over much of the executive orders and stuff that Trump has enacted since coming into office Monday. And we're going to kind of go over a list of it. It might be kind of extensive. This might be kind of a long video. I'm going to try to shorten it as much as I can. This is actually the second time of me doing this video because the first one it was just going way too long and I wasn't even halfway through. So I'm gonna try to do it a little bit shorter, a little bit more consolidated as much as I can. So that's what we're gonna do in this video. So thank you very much for joining me. Consider subscribing, like, share, comment, all that good stuff. If you don't mind, check out my other channels there. If you subscribe to them as well. If you would like, check out the Discord there. To give any kind of more like ideas and stuff for videos or just chat or whatever the case. All the channels are there under that. One-time donation there, QR code, or JMD Nation Patreon, $3 a month there. If any kind of support you give is much appreciated. Thank you very much. So let's move on. All right, so yes, we're going to go over the executive orders and stuff that he has put into place, and I want to just go ahead and get this kind of caveat or thing out of the way. Understand that immediately you kind of want to when it comes to executive orders, you kind of immediately think just like on kind of an authoritarian type of idea and opinion, which is very understandable and to some degree is very much arguable that it is kind of that type of act. For me, it depends upon what the order is, how you're trying to enact an order, and whether it's something that's been and who that order is beneficial to. um and this is the kind of action that I think from the progressive side we've been trying to make for a long time now for Democratic presidents and stuff, something that we pushed even for Biden, to do executive orders that could actually benefit the American people, and then have that be forced to litigation by Republicans or whatever the case, to argue against it. Like that, for me, executive orders, if they're done for the right reasons, are a good way to push policy that otherwise you're not going to get. But in the same token, it can also be used by people to push things that are not necessarily good for the American people, or that are, for their own benefit or whatever the case. So it has its positives and negatives, just like everything. But ultimately, any of them are subject to litigation. So any state or something legislature or federal prosecutor or whatever could bring a case against an executive order to either pause it, or hold it in place, or ultimately get it struck down. In some cases, I think I'm not a legal person, but from my understanding, it depends upon what the executive order actually does. Sometimes it can be allowed to be enacted, but then it goes through litigation and can then be struck down or allowed to continue. Or in some cases, I'm guessing it depends upon how it's being brought to court. It can actually be halted or paused, kind of held in stalemate to some degree, or whatever. I guess not stalemate, but you know what I mean. Until it's litigated and then either allowed to be enacted or struck down. So, correct me if I'm wrong in that. That's my kind of general understanding. Like I said, I'm not a legal person, don't know, but that's the way I kind of feel that, or that's my understanding of how that works. All right, so so there is even though some of these we might go over might sound bad, might sound concerning, there's many of them will be litigated, and then in some, if not a lot of them, hopefully, will eventually come to be struck down. So there, yes, we have talked about Trump being completely like off the chain this time, um, and but in to a degree that is true. Is much more off the chain than he was the last time. But we do have systems in place to push back against anything that could be concerning or for the benefit of the American people. So, anyways, let's swap over here. All right, this is from Axios, and I've decided to go with these. I had two of them a minute ago. One was from the AP, but it was so extensive, and that's what I was going through the first video. But it was just so extensive that I thought it was just too much to try to cover. And I feel like the Axios one kind of sums it up a little bit better. So, anyways, all right. So we have immigration executive orders. Many of the first orders curtailed immigration on the southern border. He promised mass deportations, but doesn't detail how he would implement, staff, and fund with a massive, costly operation. I understand Axios to some degree might come off a little bit biased to some degree, but they're not completely. So just see how they play out. Um, Immigration executive orders. Oh, never mind. Trump declared an emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border, vowing to deploy troops to the region, including the National Guard. He also instructed the Secretaries of Defense and Homeland Security to construct additional border barriers. So immediately off the bat, they did declare emergency, which allows whenever the government declares any kind of emergency, whether it's the border or whatever the case, any kind of subject matter that they consider a national emergency uh, to the security of the country or whatever the case, it kind of opens up a little bit more of the purse and more power, more ability to enact things like the military and stuff like that, and other administration areas to do a little bit more stricter action, or well, I don't know if strict is made, just do more action in general, whatever that may be. Um, he has already deployed. It says vowing to deploy. He has already deployed National Guard troops, I know, into the our national waters and stuff, or water barriers or whatever, um, whatever the world they're called. I can't remember. And then and that through that's like in Florida, Alaska, Hawaii, um, uh, and in the Bahamas, I think. I don't know. There's several places that they've already been deployed to try to keep people that were trying to come to the country through through the waters and stuff like that. Try to stop them, or contain them, or whatever the case. So I know that's already been taken into effect. And of course, constructing additional borders is just adding on to the border wall, continuing that operation, which Biden himself did. A lot of the border wall that is now there was built under Biden's watch. And so at this point, I think there's been like 600 and something miles of border built, like brand new border, like the Trump brand new border. And that's not to say in like extended areas that previously didn't have borders. That's just I think there's roughly maybe 100 miles worth of new border, like area that did not have previously have a border. The rest of it's just replacement border for whatever kind of border was there, previously. But we've already had arguments that that it is a deterrent, but it's not a fix all. Because people, if people are willing to come across, they are determined, they will find a way, whether it's around it, under it, over it, whatever the case. I mean, we've got several tunnels that are up underneath. One just recently found, or supposedly just recently found. And these are not just stuff that was happening under Biden's watch. If that's what you're thinking, this is stuff that's going back to like the early 2000s, 90s. There's several of them that are known. many of which have been, to some degree or another, filled in. Probably had some of them even probably had to be real filled in at some point. But this is something that has been going on for decades now. But anyways, going on. Because I might talk about the recent one in another video or something to get a little bit more specific on that, because I don't want to take up too much time. Trump designated certain international cartels and organizations to be terrorist organizations. Now, this is concerning to some degree because it allows for for the administration to then enact certain actions without congressional approval whenever you deem anybody a foreign terrorist organization or person or whatever group. You are, that gives you the ability to, do actions outside of congressional approval, wherever that be, putting our military on it or whatever the case. So that is concerning, that right off the bat. Not to say that they will, but just saying that allows them the ability if they so deem fit. Trump suspends U.S. Refugee Administration program settlements until such time as a further entry into the United States of refugees aligns with the interest of the United States. Homeland Security will report back within 90 days whether resuming refugee entry would be in the interest of America. And continuing on, nearly 1,660 Afghans cleared for the U.S. to resettle in the country, including family of active duty U.S. military personnel, had their flights canceled following Trump's orders. These were Afghans that previously assisted the U.S. when we were there, whether that be in action or in information or whatever the case. They in some way assisted our military while they were there. So they were, against the Taliban and stuff like that. And basically we made that promise. Hey, when at some point because of what you've done, if you help us out, or because you have helped us out, we will allow you the ability to resell in our country, and because of fears that you may have of staying here because of what you've done from the Taliban or whatever. Because they would be living under fear at that point of being killed or whatever the case, or beaten, tortured, whatever. I mean, there's numerous things that could happen. All that got canceled immediately because they were getting ready to come. Like they were on the last stages of being cleared to come to the country. From my understanding, Trump also ordered Homeland Security to terminate all categorical parole programs that are contrary to the policy of the United States established in my executive orders, including those for refugees fleeing Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. So we had refugee programs. If you remember the story of the Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio, where the president and Vance and all, the Republicans were making the whole, they're eating the dogs and the cats and the animals and all that kind of shit, which is complete hogwash. Those programs that allowed those Haitians and others that are that allow them the ability to come here legally and become permanent residents, he basically canceled that. This is due to certain situational things that have happened within the country, whether it was out of their control, or things that we have actually done that have caused conditions that have put them at risk. All right, remain in Mexico policy. Trump reinstated the remain in Mexico policy, ending a program that released asylum seekers into the U.S. while their cases were considered. It's the same thing that he did in his first administration. He's just reinstating it so that they are forced to stay in Mexico. They can't come over here. They can't be released because of asylum into the country, and then waiting for their cases to be approved and litigated or whatever. U.S. Customs Border Protection website said Monday that appointments made through the CPB One app at certain border crossings have been canceled. Hours later, Trump nixed the program. So the CBP program was something that Biden helped put in place, basically allowing for people to make appointments for asylum seekers to make appointments to come to for a hearing or whatever to come into the United States. And sometimes that's waiting up to months at a time, 6 months, 9 months in some cases. And there were some that were ready to come in. Their appointments were supposed to be within the next couple of days. I think there may have even been some that day. And they were, immediately receiving text that their appointments were being canceled. And now he's completely taken the program out. I know Shane Baum, the president of Mexico, requested and urged for Trump to allow the program to continue, for the app to continue, and then he turned around, and I think that's when he turned around and completely cut the program completely. Trump empowered officials to repeal, repatriate. I do not know what the hell that word is. I came across that word a minute ago. I need to look that word up. Or remove any alien engaged in the invasion of the southern border. Birthright citizenship. This is this has been something that's been a real major issue since it's come into play. One of his boldest moves was an attempt to end birthright citizenship for those born to undocumented immigrants. Birthright citizenship is protected by the U.S. Constitution, and the order already faces legal challenges. Trump ordered agencies starting 30 days after the order not to recognize babies as citizens if their mothers were unlawfully present at the time of birth and their father was not a U.S. Citizen or a lawful permanent resident. That also applies to children born to mothers who were lawful temporary residents and fathers who were not citizens or lawful permanent residents. So basically, under the Constitution, if a baby is born here, if an undocumented parent of mother gives birth on U.S. soil, then that baby is automatically given birthright citizenship. This basically is completely taking that away, but it's in our U.S. Constitution. It's something that cannot just be unilaterally denied or removed or argued, or changed by something like an executive order. This is arguably the most unlawful executive order that he has signed, and it's already being challenged by, I think, a federal judge or prosecutor or something from Seattle, I think. So that's already being and is already being like put on hold. So they can't, from my understanding, it's on hold and nothing can be done until it's litigated on this particular one. I could be wrong in that. If I am, correct me, but I think that's the case at the moment. Because in order for this to actually happen, you have to go through. It has to be for something in the Constitution, an amendment or something to be altered or changed. You have to go through the Congress. For starters, that's part of it. You have to go through the Congress and have approval by a supermajority, which is 60 or more votes, 60% or more of the votes. And then on top of that, it then has to be accepted by state legislatures. I think 2/3 on that as well. 60% of state legislatures have to approve of the change. Um, and then it, and then even after it's changed, it then has to be uh, like the final parts of it have to be accepted again by the states by 2/3 of majority. If I'm understanding it, it has to be like, once it is somewhat, it's like once the change has been made, then it has to then be like kind of like given a second, uh, to the change. Anyways, all right. So it's something that more than likely will not get changed overall. It's the one thing that most people are kind of in agreement that there's no way that that's going to get changed. Energy and environmental executive orders. Trump declared a national energy emergency. There you go, another emergency. Ordering expedited and deregulated drilling as he's repeatedly vowed to drill, baby, drill. One order specifically targeted energy production in Alaska, rescinding former President Biden's protections around the state's coastal areas. In a separate memorandum, Trump paused offshore wind leasing in federal waters. The heads of all other relevant agencies should not issue new or renewed approvals, rights of way, permits, liens, or leases or loans for onshore or offshore wind projects, pending a review of federal wind leasing per the order. So, Trump has had a problem with wind turbines and stuff. It's like his pet peeve. He hates them. He thinks they're ugly. Argues against them killing everything. I mean, specifically birds, and apparently whales or something too, offshore, like in the waters. It's it he doesn't like them, so he wants them gone. They're a eyesore for him. He doesn't want to see them anymore, so he is canceling or not allowing, urging agencies to stop any kind of approvals on any of them, offshore or onshore. And of course, the drill baby drill, opening up, deregulating as much as possible, to allow for even more drilling on lands that previously were deemed, sacred lands or whatever the case. Because I know Biden, I think, has some on that. They're basically just opening up the field, opening up it for everything. We're already the highest producing energy, company in the world, but that's not good enough. We got to do more. While also arguing, in his little tantrum against Canada and against Trudeau and them, that, that we don't need, and even to Mexico, we don't need your, wood, your lumber. We don't need your oil and gas or whatever. Even though, we export and import a crap load. Like, I think somewhere around 70% of the lumber and oil or something from Canada that's produced in Canada, we import here. It is crazy. And to act like we don't need it, and I would argue for Canada to be like, to call us bluff. I would. I know it would hurt us, but I almost am willing to accept that for Canada to just call us bluff and be like, you know what? Fine, we'll cut the tap off. And see how you like it. But anyways, so yeah, he's declaring to drill, open all that up. Paris Climate Treaty, state of play. He also signed an order withdrawing the U.S., the world's second largest greenhouse gas emitter, China's number one, and I think that kind of bounces back and forth. Um, from the Paris Climate Agreement, Trump had pulled out of the pact during his first term, but Biden rejoined on day one of his, and now we're exiting it again. So it's just doing a oh, well, no, we're not. Oh, we are. Oh, no, we're not. It takes a year to withdraw from the agreement, so um, we still. It's not gonna. That's one that is not gonna be an immediate change. Trump also took aim at Biden's administration federal procedures target for clean power, electrical vehicles, and other energy goals. Trump directed the Energy Secretary to restart application reviews for liquefied natural gas exports, which was paused by Biden over climate change concerns. Trump also revoked a 2021 Biden executive order that set a goal of 50% of U.S. vehicle sales to by electric by to be electric by 2030. So yeah, the electric anything that has anything to do with Green New Deal, that has anything to do with renewable energy, things like that. He is trying. Completely trying to nix all that. Get rid of it. He claims he wants everybody to be allowed to buy whatever vehicles they want. Even this executive order from Biden. I mean, it's only 50%. And that's sales, 50% of new vehicle sales at that, to be electric by 2030. That's only 50%. That doesn't, it's not like it was, oh, we want to make it to where you can't buy a gas vehicle by 2030. I think that may have been more of a goal by like 2050. That it would, like, that was the goal. And understand what a goal means. It doesn't mean that it's most definitely going to be there. That's something that's set. That's something to work towards. And they're acting like it was like crafted in stone or something, that it was going to definitely happen, and it was going to not allow you to buy a vehicle because there would only be 50% of vehicles. Now understand. We have millions of vehicles sold every year. Millions of vehicles sold every year. Millions upon millions. To think that because 50% of those could, by 2030, another 5 years from now, could potentially be electric vehicles instead of gas vehicles, that's a problem. Like, oh my gosh, you're not going to be able to buy, a gas vehicle because they're not going to be there. It's such a stupid thing. There again, climate issues, and it's not like even Biden. I mean, Biden was still drilling like crazy. He had unlocked a lot of permits on certain lands and stuff. He did restrict others. The Alaska was one that was uh, he had put protections on, and in because of climate issues and things like that. There's some sacred lands from indigenous stuff that they put restrictions on. Not allowing. That's one thing that held up the that what was the big pipeline from Canada? I forget the name now. It's completely passing me. But we were going to make a bigger one that was only going to produce like 15 to 20% more, or not produce, but allow for the flow of 15 to 20% more. And the main reason for blocking that was because it was going, like, the plans was to take it through sacred indigenous land, which we were trying to prevent. Not to mention, none of that oil would have benefited us. Most of our oil, most of what we produce is exported. That the people don't understand the global process when it comes to oil. Everything is exported and imported. Anything we make is exported. Anything other people make, we import. And the idea behind that is to make everybody richer, as far as the people who are making the oil and producing the oil, and processing the oil or whatever, the crude, um, is to make more money, because you can make more money exporting it than you can just doing it internally. That's the point. Everybody's in cahoots with this. Everybody, it's a whole global program, and people just don't understand that. Just because we are producing, a lot of oil doesn't mean that suddenly, or if we produced all of our own oil, doesn't mean that, we are going to suddenly be able to just lower our prices. Our prices are based in what we import, not what we actually make here, at least to a certain percent. All right, going on. Executive orders targeting DEI and transgender Americans. So, Trump established Monday that it is a policy of the United States to recognize two sexes, male and female. So, boom, there you go. Only male and female in this, by the federal, completely, you know, removing the idea that, yeah, there is a certain percentage of population that are, uh, 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 what is it? Uh, the, the term is completely passing me. Like unisex. That seems not right, but you know what I mean. You know what I'm talking about. Um, these sexes are not changeable and are grounded in fundamental and incontrovertible reality. The executive order read, transgender Americans are a central target of Trump's often hyperbolic and outright false campaign trail messaging. Zoom out. He also rescinded a Biden administration provision that allowed transgender people to serve in the military. Trump did not immediately ban trans military personnel from serving as he did under his first administration, but he paved the path to revive the ban. Trump, as a part of his crusade against what the GOP decries as woke culture, ordered the dismantling of government diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, initiatives within 60 days. It terminates policies and established several diversity initiatives. Axios report, including one that widens sex discrimination protections to include sexual orientation and gender identity. In an order Tuesday, Trump specifically directed the Federal Aviation Administration to immediately return to non discriminatory, merit based hiring as required by law and rescinded DEI initiatives. In a separate order, Trump ordered all executive departments and agencies to determine what he called discriminatory and illegal preferences, policies, programs, guidance, and other provisions, and to combat illegal private sector DEI performances, mandates, policies, programs, and activities. In doing so, he revoked decades of executive orders, including the Equal Employment Opportunity Order of 1965, signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson. It also calls for each agency to identify up to 9 potential civil compliance investigations of publicly traded corporations, large nonprofit corporations or associations, foundations, foundations with assets of $50 million or more, state and local bar and medical associations, and institutions of higher education with endowments over $1 billion. Um, so yes, he DEI. This is one that I just don't understand. In the Republican bubble, it's like the way that they view DEI is that it is like, it's really kind of the way they viewed affirmative action, which to some degree has some argument, but it's completely blocking out the whole other part of the argument. Um, and for DEI, it's that, it comes down to the whole merits kind of thing, that what DEI allows for, and like their only view and vision is that it only allows for people to be hired based on other things outside of merit. So, in other words, uh, it it allows for a meritless uh, hiring. So, in other words, people are hired not based on what they can do, but based on some sort of social or physical or whatever kind of situation, whether it's because of race, sex, age. And understand that's what DEI about. Is about being inclusive, about being allowing and basically um, the acceptance and safety. Even this is not all about just in the hiring process. What people don't understand this is not only it's also in just in the working process as well. Like you just being a employee, there's protections that this was allowing you, from discrimination based on anything, whether it be sex, whether it be race, whether it be age, whether it be sexuality or your gender or or anything, basically is and also from a hiring perspective, it allowed for or from the way I look at it, it prevents people from being hired based on those things as well. Now, from their perspective, they're thinking that's the only reason why they're being hired is based on their perspectives. But for me, it's the other side of the argument where it also is allowing for those things to be accepted to get to the merit part. And because to me, it also without it, previously you would have talk about merit based. You would have people hired strictly because they were just you know uh, a specific color or a specific gender or or sex or whatever the case. Um, and it wasn't about merit at all. Um, so there are several arguments, in my opinion, that can be made in positive for DEI. But here, their argument is that they want merit. They're arguing that it's not merit based, and I think that's just a way of trying to make DEI sound like it's not beneficial to be used. Where I would argue that it actually does the opposite. Um, because I mean, how many times have you heard that of somebody getting hired strictly because they were a male, or strictly because they were white, or whatever the case? It had nothing to do with being merited at all. Where you think of the instance, and this is being very oversimplificated, but it's just saying, and just strictly in the white race issue. If you have a white person and a black person both going for the same job, um, uh, without DEI in the past. Now, this is really based in. You would argue this was affirmative action, but I'm saying replace, you know, the black person with anybody. All right, whether it be someone a female. Let's say the white person's male, the female is white. Even whatever the case, you could replace it. DEI allows you to replace that with any under um prioritize or under appreciated sect of the population. And it allows for that person to have on a fair basis with the white male. If you want to argue that, it gives them the equal opportunity for being hired. Then it falls into, okay, now we have the merit based thing. So it puts them on equal playing field. So it's not like you can't just say you're not going to hire that person, even if they are, because before you would be able to hire just the white male over anybody else, regardless of merit. Where in DEI, it allows for that other person to argue, at least the ability to argue their merit and ability to do the job. to get the job over the other. So, this is for me, it's, and that's just in strictly on a hiring part of it, not even in protections after thereof, whatever. Anyways, but people just completely misunderstand DEI, or certain people, anyways. So that's all thrown out the window now, and this is all, and so that, um, yeah. Anyways, you get the point. Other executive orders affecting federal workers. Trump signed several other provisions that will impact government workers. He required a full-time return to in-office work for federal employees and ordered a hiring freeze on government positions. The hiring freeze is not applied to the military or immigration enforcement, national security, or public safety. So yes, they ordered people back to office. So no more um, no more out of office positions. So these are workers that were working from home doing the job, which perfectly which has been set up because, and it was mainly set up a lot because of COVID. But they're wanting them back in person. I guess the argument is that they're more effective when they're in office, or more, I don't know, efficient maybe when they're in office. I don't know, but that puts a lot of people, puts a burden on their income or on their expenses when because of this. So technically they're taking uh, in theory they're taking a price reduction, a income reduction, and doing a hiring freeze. Um, he also reinstated his first term Schedule F executive order, which could make it easier to fire civil servants deemed disloyal. And this was even expanded in many ways, deeper than what he did in his first term. The order could strip employment protections for thousands of federal employees. Employees are not required to personally or politically support the are not required to personally or politically support the current president, but they must faithfully implement administration policies to the best of their abilities. Understand that? They're not required, but they are firmly, this means that they are firmly advised to, or they could be fired. Simple as that. Um, Jan 6 pardons and other clemency actions. Trump pardoned the vast, and this is all. A lot of this is all in the Project 2025 that we argued before. This is straight from the pages. Trump pardoned the vast majority of Jan 6 defendants charged with participating in the Capitol riots and commuted the sentences of 14 others. Among those were leaders of the extremist groups of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. These are the hostages. Approximately 1,500 for a full pardon, Trump said from the Oval Office on his first night as president. Pardoning rioters was a prominent campaign pledge that Trump had previously said recipients would be determined on case-by-case basis. And this is what was argued before he did this, or questioned rather, before he did this to Vance in an interview where Vance was like, no, we're not going to just pardon everybody. Or he was acting like he was under understanding that violent, he's like saying clearly violent, offenders we would not pardon, but those that were non-violent, those would be pardoned, which is roughly, I think, around there's roughly around, I think, 500 to 600 or so of this 1,500 that were considered violent. And the rest were non-violent. But Trump just did a full pardon, except for 14 of them. He just did a full pardon. So even Vance got sideswiped by this. And like I said, leaders of extremist groups, Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. As a matter of fact, one of those leaders already has been arrested again on gun charges. Zoom out. He also announced Tuesday he had signed a full and unconditional pardon for Ross Ulbricht, the creator of the unlawful Silk Road marketplace, who was sentenced to life in prison in 2015. On Wednesday, he issued a full unconditional pardon to two police officers convicted for the 2020 murder of Karen Hilton Brown, a 20-year-old black woman in Washington, D.C. So yeah, that happened. It's crazy. Crazy. Health executive orders, WHO and COVID and drug costs. Trump signed an order pulling the U.S. from the World Health Organization, a process he started during his first term. Monday's order said that the U.S. will withdraw due to the organization's mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic and other global health crisis, its failure to adapt urgently needed reforms, and its inability to demonstrate independence from the appropriate policy influence of HWO member states. Trump also rescinded a 2020 Biden order to lower the cost of prescription drugs. So this was a cost that was for Medicare and Medicaid recipients, or maybe just Medicare for seniors, to lower drug costs. This was something that Biden had put into place before he went out trying to lower costs of certain prescription drugs, and Trump just completely exed it. The Trump administration on Wednesday waived requirements that green card applicants be vaccinated against COVID-19. I don't know. I know this. I know there was something to do with military, that they were waiving the requirements for. I don't know if this is a part of that. I'm not sure. TikTok extension, Doge, and more executive orders. Just a quick list of some other stuff real quick. Trump signed a number of other executive orders. These include redesignated the Houthi rebels in Yemen as a terrorist organization. So yeah, this group of rebels that is in Yemen, the ones that have been in a back and forth with Saudi Arabia for a number of years. Saudi Arabia has, you could argue, did a genocide there, but they're considered a terrorist organization because they are in connection with Iran. Ensuring government agencies do not unconstitutionally breach the free speech of any American citizen, highlighting what Trump and his allies consider censorship under Biden. Ordering a review of trade practices and agreements. This probably has something to do with the tariffs. Revoking security clearances of Trump's former National Security Advisor John Bolton and former intelligence officers who signed a letter discrediting the Hunter Biden laptop story. This right here is just petty. This is completely petty. Formally establishing the Department of Government Efficiency, which is DOGE, which Elon Musk is heading up. Suspending the TikTok ban for 75 days. That was all a ploy. Declaring that federal buildings should respect regional, traditional, and classical architecture heritage to beautify public spaces and ennoble the United States. I believe this is the argument that they're making about the American flag and stuff being the only flag flown at federal buildings and stuff. So not allowing for any other type of flag, whether it be a pride flag or a Black Lives Matter, any kind of things like that, any kind of other flag of my understanding, that was kind of part of this. I don't know what else was part of it, but that was kind of what was part of it. Renaming Denali to Mount McKinley. So this was like a mountain that apparently was renamed in respect to indigenous group, and they're renaming it back to Mount McKinley because apparently that's, offensive to them. The Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which is just ridiculous. This will only be in the eyes of America, though. On the global scale, it 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 will not be changed. And 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 as far as the global records, the department that holds global naming, that won't be changed. The Gulf of Mexico was named the Gulf of Mexico for a reason, and because everybody's like, oh, I mean, it should be the Gulf of America. I mean, who named it the Gulf of Mexico anyway? It ain't Mexico's. I mean, this is North America and South America and blah blah blah. The Gulf of Mexico was named before the Americas as a state, as the United States was actually formed. So technically, it was a part of Mexico. And that's in connection with, or what was called from the Aztec, and some other Native American groups, or anyways. So technically, it was the Gulf of what we knew at that time as being the land of the Aztec and stuff like that. And that did encompass all the whole land mass that's now Texas, Louisiana. All that. There was none of that was yet established by America, like the United States of America. And at the same time, the name understanding of North America, South America, that also was not really made at that time. So that's the reason why it is Gulf of Mexico and has remained the Gulf of Mexico. Federally recognizing the Lumbee tribe. I don't know what this is about. Declassifying files. I just heard about this related to the assassination of John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, and Martin Luther King Jr. I mean, that's something that I don't see a problem with. They should have been declassified. Supporting the use of digital assets. Now, I don't know what's behind that, like what his reasoning for that is, but outside of just saying that he did it. Supporting the use of digital assets, blockchain technology, and other financial technologies. I'm guessing this also about the AI stuff. And it's his giving his support behind crypto and stuff like that. Establishing a presidential council of administration advisors, not administrators, advisors on science and technology, composed of up to 24 members. I don't know what that's about, honestly. Revoking existing artificial intelligence policies and directives that act as a barrier to American AI initiatives, and setting 180. I don't know where I get 180-day deadline to develop an AI plan. So yeah, that's a complete list of executive orders and stuff. Well, as the time of this was made, I think this goes back 3 days ago when they initially did it, but I think there's been some additions added to it. I don't know at what point. It doesn't state. It does say this story has been updated with additional developments. But I don't know if that's like when the last update was. It doesn't really say from what I can tell. Well, updated 8 hours ago. Whatever. Okay. So yeah. That was the complete list. I know this was a long video, a lot to go over. Some of it, I hope I gave some sort of context to give a better understanding. If there was stuff that I missed or something I maybe got wrong or whatever, please, correct me or give more information in the comments. Things that were missed, add that in the comments, anything like that. Like I said, understand that a lot of this, like, again, is procedural. they have to be litigated. Things may not necessarily go into place immediately, or they, even if they are, they may not be held up or may not be allowed to be enacted or whatever. I mean, the litigation towards, they're going to hit litigations on ones that are more immediate than others. As far as when they are to be enacted. It's the reason why the birthright one was immediately attacked. Uh, Things like that. So, like I said, these executive orders, not all of them go in place the day of. There's some of them that are, spread out or meant to come in within 30 days, or they're like evaluation periods, of 90 days or something like that. But, and like I said, some of it's just pure, you know, stuff that's not even policy driven. But anyways, let me know what you think, and if anything other major ones come in and stuff like that, we'll probably talk about that as well. But I'm at the stake of keeping this under an hour because it's already 55 minutes. And I know if you stayed to this point, you're amazing, you're awesome, thank you very much, you're like my number ones. um and hell, I guess leave a comment. Uh I'm a number one. There you go. Do that. Leave a comment. I'm a number one. um, so thank you very much, and until next time, peace. This is Clear Talk. I'm out. Bye.